and it's a small thing, but the principle is the same. So I think, you know, we've got to take a look at our licensees in unincorporated Will County, because if you have an American Legion in unincorporated Will County that is, you know, next door to a municipality that allows it, there's definitely going to be a competition issue. The second point I'd like to touch on is I had about an hour-long conversation with a representative from the Gaming Board, and as Sam Panayotovich mentioned, they exercise extreme diligence in regulating gaming in Illinois. And a couple of the points that, because I asked the same question that some people have asked me, and you brought up, Mr. Chairman, why does it take 9 to 12 months to implement rules? Well, there's an awful lot of technical rules that have to go into this. Each bar and video terminal has to be connected by computer to the state. And each manufacturer of video gaming machines has to be licensed by the state. And the suppliers, then it's a tree essentially. It's a manufacturer, it's a supplier, and eventually the owner. So it's a convoluted process, and I'm hoping, and I think it would be useful during the public hearing process if we could get a representative from the Gaming Board down here and talk about that. But one of the fundamental questions that, Mr. Chairman, you brought up last week in the Executive Committee is we don't want any further administrative burden or enforcement burden either. And the one thing that became very clear to me in talking to both the Gaming Board representative and our legislators is that they are not going to delegate enforcement to any local municipality. They believe that that would undermine the integrity not only of their authority with regard to video gaming, they feel it would undermine their authority with regard to casinos and OTBs. Well, I guess the Racing Commission regulates OTBs, but the other gaming establishments. Now, you know, I think we all have a right to be skeptical about that, but I think that's another issue that they're going to take their time with and convene local officials to make sure that there is no additional burden placed on municipalities. And I think everyone had the IML fact sheet on this, and the IML is being very vigilant about making sure that the rulemaking process does not pose extreme unfunded mandates on local municipalities. Finally, the third issue that there's been some allusion to is the revenue component. Based on their estimates, 30% of net income from the video games will go to the state, and the bulk of that will go to the capital fund, capital infrastructure fund that was established to, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, to provide debt service for the bonds that were issued for the $30 billion capital program. I think we all had frustration over the last 5 years with how the capital bill proceeded. I think it's a reasonable debate as to whether it's too big or whatever, but it was always a key component in the capital bill considerations. And a lot of other revenues were explicitly rejected. I mean, most people that we talked to over the course of the last 5 years when the capital bill was being debated thought that the most obvious would be to increase the gas tax, but there wasn't the political will to do that. There was a talk about expansion of sales taxes to services. That was explicitly rejected, as was an income tax increase. So, and Mr. Chairman, you're right, the estimate is that it will fund 30% approximately of the bonds that are necessary for the capital bill, but it was always, video gaming was always an integral part of the concept of financing the capital bill. And I think it's prudent, again, to find out, A, how many local jurisdictions are going to opt out and what those implications are. For the county itself, it would generate revenue based on the number of gaming terminals in the 44 establishments. And assuming that each of the establishments had the maximum, and I think this is an important fact too, the maximum number of gaming terminals that would be permitted in any establishment would be 5. I think, you know, we've heard from folks that have talked about the gaming devices that are currently in taverns and bars and fraternal organizations, and just based on personal experience, I can say that I've walked into a few that have a lot more than 5. So there would be a maximum of 5, and it would essentially generate, as Sam said, about $11,250 in income for the municipality or county in this case annually, which essentially would be, if all of them had 5 machines, about $500,000, just ballpark figures. So I think, it's a good thing that we're going to take the time to hear from everybody. I think the gaming board told me that they have to issue within the next 10 days or so their process for developing the administrative rules. And if we can get somebody from the gaming board down here for the public hearings, maybe they can shed some light on the intricacies of the issues they're dealing with. And in the meantime, I think we're all going to reach out to constituents of all sorts on both sides of the issue and try to come to some consensus. And as long as we have a deliberative process, I think that's going to be in the best interest of all the Will County residents.
Man, and this is probably a question for your office, even though I think you're going to have to go to council to get an answer. Does the county, would the county have the ability to create a different liquor license classification for those that have video gaming, if it were allowed? And do we have the ability to charge something different for that license? Do you know?
Legislation, it authorizes the county to impose up to a $25 per terminal fee. So it doesn't speak to a different class of liquor license, but I read the bill pretty closely over the weekend, and it doesn't say you can't. It just says you have to have a valid liquor license.
I didn't think it addressed it. So I'm asking then. Maybe Jim, you can talk with the state's attorney's office. Can there be another classification of liquor license for bars that are on-site consumption with a gaming?
Yeah. The bill doesn't speak to that, Mr. Chairman, and while it doesn't attempt to detract from any of the power of the local entities in terms of liquor licensing, it also specifically does not attempt to take away, for instance, in the municipal cases, home rule authority. So, there's still the powers that you have legislatively to deal with classifications, but this bill doesn't speak to that at all, because they just control the gaming aspect. And as Matt indicated, it looks like they have exclusive jurisdiction in terms of the enforcement, that they are the arm that polices it. They're not, in this legislation, delegating anything, to the local entities in that regard. So in terms of classification, I don't think it in any way attempts to detract from the power to classify licenses in many categories. It certainly doesn't attempt to, in the municipal situation, take away any home rule powers if somebody wants to get ultra creative. So.
Okay. Well, this is one of those things I think we should take a look at, even though they would apply directly to, I assume, the state for the machines. But they'd have to verify they have the appropriate license to do so. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Well, I'd like everybody to participate, get in your communities. We'll certainly have plenty of time, and we'll have public hearings. I do probably need for someone to make a motion to assign this to the executive committee. Moved by Adamick, second by Bellotta. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. The executive committee will work on the public hearings. And we'll discuss how we're going to do that, and whether they're all here, whether we get out actually into different areas of the communities. So maybe we can do three, maybe have three. We'll have three districts combined at a time. So we can make it more convenient for local communities to participate. Like I say, I think that we'll be lucky to vote on this by October, probably be closer to November if we, I'll also give me your input, and you can do that through staff, and they'll bring it to the committee. Nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Gould, second by Adamick, all in favor. Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you.